Okay, so hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to fill in kind of the background to the metal, which is the large kind of section of the harness. It's technically, there's some leather stitching that we will also start focusing on, and a very out of focus, more cushion soft material. My reasoning behind this is I like to do, especially for these high contrast kind of parts of a drawing like the metal, I like to have something to base it off of. So that is what we're gonna do today. Don't know how long it's gonna take because the texture itself has quite a shiny and reflective property, which I think will also be interesting to kind of tackle. To differentiate between a different type of shiny material compared to the ultra shiny and reflective metal parts. So we are going to get cracking. Let me just see. Yeah. So I'm going to start here in this back corner. I am going to take my brush with some powder on it. This is just a reused makeup brush with synthetic soft bristles, and it's quite fluffy, it's not densely compact. And I'm just gonna fill in this entire back area. In this tutorial I'm not gonna focus at all on the neck of the horse. It's all just about the actual equipment and their textures and how to build up their values and such. So in this I've got some refining of the leather stitching to do, but I generally, for something like this, I tend to do it as I start putting in the first layer. And I'm gonna go over the top because this is still, the leather's 2-3 layers in, so I just go over the top with my brush. I don't mind the extra little bit of powder. Now I'm going to take my F pencil and I'm going to start just kind of defining my edges. And I am focusing primarily, yes, defining my edges and the parts of that specific element, but I'm also focusing more on the shadows. So when I do any form of detail work, when I generally do my line work, I focus on everything, just the basics, the structure, the shape, that's all. Then as soon as I go in with my first layer, I use all the darker values to help me map out parts of the drawing as I go along. It's just a lot easier for me to use it as a guide rather than using maybe lighter or highlighted sections. So in these initial layers, I primarily focus on the darker values, the shadows. And then as I build the layers, obviously I will add in all the highlighted bits. just going to take a blending stump and just blend that in. Sometimes I don't use a pencil, other times I'll use a blending stump. Generally for softer textures like fur, I will use the blending stump first instead of the pencil to kind of map out the inner works of a section of drawing. But since this is not fur, it's actually natural material, I choose to do it with pencil because the end look will be harsh, sharp, very smooth, and you don't necessarily need that blended look that gives you the illusion of depth. You'd rather want to create something with substance, so I tend to go the more direct route with materials like leather and wood and metal. Just gonna take, you can continue using the F pencil at a lighter pressure, but I'm just gonna take an H pencil because I want to use more pressure but not necessarily have the depth. So I'm just going down a step with an H pencil, but you can just use the F pencil at a very lighter pressure. Take a blending stump and then just blend that all in. Now I'm going to make quite a big jump from my F pencil. I'm going to take a 3B. And just kind of continue on that trend of defining the edges and working on the darker values. I'm still using a lighter pressure. Just in case I want to make changes, which can happen. I'm very aware that I sometimes do miss small details in the beginning, so this is just kind of a step for my own benefit. And it's going to look messy and not very polished in the beginning. Just like I said with the leather, those initial layers are not supposed to look polished or anything close to what it will look like in the end. These beginning layers are merely your guide for the detail work. I'm going to take a considerably dirtier blending stump just to blend that out, and actually I'm going to add some powder to it. Just to help it along. I tend to add powder to the blending stump when it's a higher B range pencil, just to give it little bit of help of blending it out, it also stops it from having that harsh line, and that's also one of the reasons why I use light pressure, is to kind of prevent having those harsh lines that you have to work really hard to blend out. Now for obviously this inner piece here is a soft cushion material. For that I'm actually going to use the blending stump first and very much treat it as if it was a base layer to fur, because it is a soft, it's got wrinkles, there's some texture that shows that material texture. Just to give it a different of a feel to what is surrounding it. So I'm going to take one of my cleaner blending stumps. Just before I do that, I'm just going to clean up my line again that we lost with the blending stump and the powder. Now I'm not going to add anything first. I'm just going to first kind of use what's on this blending stump to map out little folds and so forth. So I don't have a grid, so I am using what's surrounding it to figure out how high the folds are, and sometimes it's just, you kind of just use your own discretion to figure out where to put it. And also, if you use the blending stump, it's a lot easier to fix your mistakes. It's a lot easier to move things around. That's why I prefer using it to map out, especially large sections. It gives you a cushion for if you want to maybe change things around, where you notice maybe something does not look right, or you've drawn something too large or too small, or it's got the wrong shape to it, because all these shadows have shapes to it, and it's very much, you've got to forget actually what you're drawing and just focus on the shapes at hand. It makes it a lot easier once you've got that kind of mindset in your initial layers. It'd be a lot easier to map things out and figure out how your shadows and highlights and everything fit together to create the shape. So now I'm going to take a 2H pencil and just continue building up that mapping out and filling in the texture. I'm just going to take a blending brush, put some powder on it, tap off all the excess, and just go over top and just add an extra little layer of depth. I'm going to go into the neck parts and over the leather. Like I said before, it just makes it a lot easier. And then you can just easily clean it up afterwards. Now I'm going to go up to my F pencil and just do the same thing. So this here at the back is, I assume, kind of part of something else. So I'm just going to block it out pretty, not harshly, but give it a nice solid value. And that will also just help block out the leather. And it stops right there. Actually, I'm going to take a 2B and just go over that. And then I'll use the F pencil for the actual cushion type material. Obviously, as soon as everything else gets filled in, these 2Bs and 3Bs will not be dark enough at all. It just looks like it is the darkest values in the entire drawing, but it's nowhere near the darkest it's going to get. So just the F pencil and just continue on building this material texture. And in these kind of parts where you start adding the first 2 or 3 layers, everything will kind of want to melt together. So I tend to leave little edges blank, or I tend to make a little darker edge just to discern between the parts. And it's a very subtle little quick, slightly darker, harder pressure, or just a little white highlight line, just to keep kind of a difference so that everything just doesn't melt together. And then I tend to just blend up into that point, and then there'll still be a value difference. Now I'm just going to take a blending stump and just blend over those areas. Now I'm just going to take my mono eraser and just add in a little bit more of a difference in a lighter value. And then I'm just going to take a bit more powder on a blending brush, tap off the excess, and just add a layer. There we go. Now I've done a first layer, as I did with the leather. I'm going to kind of continue that trend of doing first layers first. So now we're going to tackle this shiny thing. I don't know words for this stuff, so you've got to bear with my strange descriptions. Now before I get going on this and add powder, which is going to be my first step, still thinking brush or blending stump. It will probably be blending stump just for the control. I'm going to define my metal and the leather stitching first. So I'm going to do that with an F pencil, and then I'm going to take a blending stump. Yes, I'm going to take a blending stump and add my first layer of just grey. So that is what I'm going to do. Right, so now that I've filled in sort of some of the stitching, very roughly, we are, well, I am, you also. We are going to kind of fill in the background space. I didn't do the stitching on this side. I kept it only here. And then we'll see what I am in the mood for doing after that. Maybe work on some of the metal, and then we can go from there, because this is quite shiny leather, smooth surface. So yeah, we'll kind of go from there. Maybe I'll work more on the leather straps themselves. We will see. So I'm going to take, actually, I'm going to use a pencil for this first. And I'm just going to roughly kind of fill in the space. Light pressure. I'm going to use a blending stump to blend it out. I think a brush would be not enough control for this area, so I'm going to use a pencil instead. And I didn't sharpen it at all because I don't want that sharp point, don't need that sharp point. And obviously as I build the layers, I refine the edges, so to speak. So I'm not that worried about being a little bit messy and maybe not as precise. You obviously might have a different approach and prefer everything to be correct before you even start. So that might take a little bit more time. I'm impatient, so that's kind of the reason I do it as I go along. And I'm going to keep it between the metal and the stitching. I'm not going to go underneath just yet to here. Now I'm going to take the blending stump. You can use any size you like. I'm not going to add powder just yet. I'm just going to use, that's why I'm kind of using one that's already a bit dirty, just to fill in the gaps and even it out. Now I'm going to go back in with my F pencil, and I'm going to fill in the gaps that are technically the shadows between the metal. and then build up from there, because I think I'm going to do this whole section together just so that I can play off the values off of each other. So I'm quickly going to do that. And this might take me some time because I only put in the basic shapes. So, and this obviously isn't the darkest pencil I'm going to use with the metal. So this won't make, if you do make a mistake, it's easily corrected. And when I do metal in general, I always start in this way. I always look at the darker values first. It just makes it easier to get the shapes in. Right, now that I've kind of done that and also established more of the rings shape, I just got, because there's so many of it, I just sometimes need to count the rings to figure out where I am in the grand scheme of things. So now I'm going to continue on with the F pencil, because obviously I put in a very light layer initially, so there's still lots more, well, not a lot more value that I can get out of it, but I can definitely use it to still build up the next maybe 1 or 2 layers, probably 1. So I'm just going to use this to start. Here's obviously the darker areas and move my way up. I'm not interested in the shapes of the reflections just yet. That will come maybe second and third layer. So and just same as what you did with the leather, to kind of distinguish between areas, since we're still building up the values. Just either leave yourself a little bit of a darker line or maybe a little space, just so that you can tell where one thing starts and another ends, basically. And I'm also going to use this to kind of clean up underneath the stitching. And I still haven't sharpened this pencil. I prefer duller points when working in my initial layers. That just protects the paper, basically. And you're just going to do the same thing to the underside, beneath the metal chain. now just take a blending brush again and just give it a blend, just to even it out a little bit more, and get it kind of a smoother look. Because obviously the way you're blending is going to be very important with especially this texture, because it's smooth, it's reflective. Besides what's going on underneath here, closer to the stitching, and up here with a bit of scratching and wear and tear, this up top side, and also here with the metal reflecting on the leather, you want to keep kind of dragging that smoothness through by continuously blending your layers. And this is where kind of the soft build-up is very important, to ensure you've got that smooth, continuous blend, and it looks similar across the entire kind of surface or area of that particular material. Right, so the Staedtler F pencil isn't going to give me anything more, so I'm going to go to the Cretacolor F pencil and just use that as an extra step in building up depth. So I'm going to just go across, and now I'm only going to focus on the more darker stuff, and kind of work more in this area upwards. So the Cretacolor just gives me that little bit more range in value. Let me see. Just gonna give that top bit a blend. And then do the same up until the second kind of metal rivet thing, and then just underneath the metal chain. Just give that small little section blend. Now I'm going to take the same little blending stump. I'm going to put some powder on it, tap off the excess, and just add like a little wash, just to get more smooth, because there's already 3 decent layers on this. It won't really add too much depth, so I was quite liberal with the F pencil layers. Now I'm gonna add some of that kind of reflections. And this I'm just going to use my Kneaded Eraser and it still removes the layers quite easily. So there is method to my madness, really, with the layers and everything. Okay, so I am going to go B pencil, focusing on this area first because it's the darkest section of this shiny leather. Start in your darkest area, which is closest to the metal chain, and work your way. The reason I'm going B pencil, not HB, because I need just that extra more, not black look, but just more depth. So this is where I kind of start to kind of skip grades, basically in the pencil. And I'm just going to blend as I go. And I just added a little bit of powder So with the B pencil, you just need a bit more help to blend it out smoothly. If you're going to put it in a pencil extender because it's a bit short. Too big for this one. There we go. Just a bit more. There we go. So now that I've kind of added a bit more depth in there, I'm gonna go back to the metal, the shadows in the metal chain. I'm gonna get nice and close. I am gonna actually, before I take pencil to it, I'm going to take my brush, pick up a bit of powder and just sweep it over the metal. I'm going to include the metal rivets as well. And this, I just prefer working on a slightly more of a grey tint. The whites can be very overwhelming. Very much, I think painters feel the same way about a stark white canvas. So, take the B pencil, let me just give it a sharpen first as well. One more turn. Go. And now I'm going to focus a bit more on the metal itself. This chain's got quite a lot going on in it. I don't think we have got quite enough space to fit in all the details, but we will get to that kind of, it's important as an artist to also know, depending on the size of your work, what details become important and what become kind of negligible. That's not really going to add to your overall drawing. So it's kind of like you have to take it out of focus to see which of the, you need to be able to visualize it from a distance to be able to know which of your details will become important to the overall look, because there are some of them that are nice when you've got a larger drawing to be able to put in. That's why I am now quite enjoying the larger projects, because you can focus on those very minute details that you generally can't put in because you're limited by space. So you as an artist, you need to kind of know that you don't need to put in every detail. It's not necessary. For now that I'm going to kind of work in little sections of 3 or 4 links. just going to take my HB pencil now, and I'm going to keep my F pencil of, I'm going to prefer to use my Cretacolors for this. So with the HB, just very lightly, you can use the F pencil for this as well, it doesn't really matter. Definitely now that I'm starting to add in kind of the details, we are going to have to edit some of it down. Definitely won't be able to add everything. I think if I do sometimes redo pieces. I think this one would be excellent to do on a very large size. Just because of this metal, the detail within the metal and the leather and the stitching and everything. So you obviously can choose the size that you want to do this tutorial at. It's just a lot easier for me. I've got a bunch of large projects on the way, ongoing actually. I already bought new paper as well, so probably be new ones added to the list very soon. But this would be actually a very nice large project if you want that kind of really detail packed drawing. Really, this one is really nice for that. Because as you zoom in, you can kind of see that you can see all the lengths intertwined with one another. So it becomes a very cool exercise in kind of being able to draw this repeating pattern. So I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna switch between my F pencil and my HB and my B, and I am going to focus solely on the darker bits of the drawing and fill that in. It's very actually self-explanatory. Once you've done one or two, I want you to solely focus. You'll see there's like a dark kind of band with every metal link that I'm putting in. So I'm focusing on the most visually darkest areas that's in between the metal and on the metal itself. So I'm just going to go in and detail out the sections in between the links. I'm going to speed up this part because there's not much that I can explain other than, you know, just detailing it out. Once we get to more of the intricacies of the shadows and building up the values within the links, then I will come back to talking terms. So we are gonna, well, we're not gonna, it's visually in the video, we're gonna speed through this, but yeah, I don't know how long this is gonna take me. So I will see you after that. Yeah, and I'll probably say watch it through first just to see kind of the end result that I want, and then yeah, I'll see you back in a bit. Well, apparently I didn't press record, so you completely missed that. Sorry for my brain fart, but this is basically the end results that I'm looking for. It's not wow, it's really just a basic guideline and outline of the kind of the basic shape of the links. It's very flat, it shows some kind of direction, and in here where you can start to see the links going underneath one another, just to kind of start mapping those out as well. Yeah, so I'm gonna just quickly pop another layer of powder over top, tap off the excess, and you could have used your discretion where you wanted to use your F, HB and B pencil. If you just wanted to use an F or an HB or B or whatever, or just 2 of the 3 or just 1 or all 3, that was totally up to you. Yeah, it depends on kind of, maybe I went in with the HB and I wanted to just add a touch more depth, then I would have gone in with the B pencil, and if I wanted something a little less, I've gone in with the F. But generally I didn't go in with the F as much as I did the HB and the B pencil. So I'm just cleaning up my mono eraser. And the same thing that we did with the darks, we're now going to do with the generally most visible lights. So just scoot myself into my reference, and this, I would say this is probably not going to be as precise to the reference for me personally, because you just want a general, the majority of the shapes of your highlights are going to come in from, you're going to make it a lot larger than they actually are, and you're going to use other pencils to shape the highlights. So this is me just basically going in, I'm actually not even following the reference, because I know that a highlight would be close to these darker lines. So I am just popping them in kind of as I go along. Kind of just giving them a, and you can see that the general rule of thumb is you got a dark line and a metal, the highlight would be right near it, right close by. It's not going to be far, they like go hand in hand basically. So once you know the general idea of how these metal links work, you can easily replicate them with a very bad reference. So if you've got a reference that you can't, for this one, for instance, you can get right up close to the details, you can zoom in quite far, it's got good quality. But some references obviously can't be that spoiled, especially if you maybe do commission work, or commission work will basically be your biggest culprit for not having good references. But if you have a general idea of how material behaves and you know where your light source is coming from, you can very easily replicate it kind of without having the exact angle or shapes. If you know how it behaves with light, metal is one of those things that behaves, if it behaves one way, it behaves that way all the time. I think it depends obviously on the color of the metal and how dirty is it, but that can be easily just you can apply your knowledge to it. Right, so now what I did here, I'm going to replicate on this side. I'm not going to talk it through, it's going to be just a visual kind of enjoy the process type of thing. I'm going to use the exact same method, F pencil, blend, powder, and then for the metal it's the HB, the F, and the B pencil. So yeah, gonna do exactly the same thing, just fill in these more the other side. Don't worry about it being more blurred out and out of focus. The initial layers are gonna look exactly the same as this. So we are going to do that and fill in this whole thing, and then I will come back on mic and then we can talk about what the plan is next. Okay. Right, so just quickly fold that in, and as you can see, very little effort. You've established some form of 3D effect just with your little B pencil and everything. Just here I had to, because I don't fill in everything. I sometimes, even when tracing, I completely leave out things because I just don't see it. And then once I start drawing, I'm like, oh, I didn't fill that in. So I just quickly filled that in, but it was very easy to establish because once you kind of figure out how the shapes go, it's quite quick and easy. So just still soft with this. This type of material really relies on what's around it in order to get it right. Same with the metal. The leather is very much a Staedtler material that can be easily be done on its own due to the very stark contrast within itself. But something like this that's very blended with the very soft reflections really does rely on whatever surrounds it. So yeah, that will conclude this part. In the next part, I'll probably start to fill in this entire area and maybe start to work in more layers on the leather itself. I'm quite happy to leave the stitching and even the metal rivets till kind of the end. There's just certain stuff that I prefer to leave until more is completed. But now that we've kind of got the bulk of the drawing in, I'm going to start in the next part to refine certain areas. Add this and refine even these darker shadows and the stuff in the foreground. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the second part. The third part will be out a lot closer to the second part than the first, or the second was to the first. So yeah, this one shouldn't take too long, I say that, but then again I know myself, this is going to be a fun, since there's lots of details and the stitching and all the leather stitching and fun contrasts and highlights and the metal stuff. This one might take a while as well. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you for part 3 or whatever is next where I talk to you. But yeah, I really do enjoy filming the Sounds of Drawing videos, the very long process. It's for all the big projects. But yeah, I'll see you in part 3, and happy drawing. See you all then.